Following the life as a first responder is a task not made for the common man. In this world there are wolves and then there are sheep. The wolves prey on the weak, which are the sheep, and fester on them to survive, while the sheep are just the common man. Not saying they are weak, but they're just simple folk that try to live their lives day to day, paycheck to paycheck. To protect those sheep, there are the sheep wolves, the guard dogs, the protectors. And they are much like the wolf, but the only one thing is they protect the sheep, and they don't eat the sheep. They eat the wolves.
Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Sheriff John Brown come for you? Tell me what you wanna do.
In a second here, our school resource officer, Officer Picasso, will explain what his life was like as an officer. So here's that interview. Right, live. Alright, if you could for me, go ahead and state your name, your rank, and how many years you've been with the police department.
I'm Officer Joe Licasio. I've been with the Milford Police Department a little over 4 years. I'm a patrolman in New Milford. Prior to that, I was a town constable for Park Hampstead, and prior to that, I was a police sergeant in Torrington for 27 years.
Alright, if you go ahead and tell me how many, your story on becoming a police officer.
When I was in high school, I kind of always wanted to be a police officer, so I went in the Army as a military police officer. Ended up going to canine handling school and found that was a niche I really enjoyed. Took the Torrington Police Department test just because it was being given, and it was the next town over, and got hired at 21 years old and went to the police academy, which back then was only 14 weeks. When I was in Torrington, I again went and, was an accident investigation team when I was a patrolman. I was a motorcycle patrol officer. I was in the narcotics division for a period of time. I was a dog handler, which was the best part of the career for a long time. I was a SWAT team member for 12 years, also a team leader in the SWAT team, and sergeant for I think 14 or 15 years. And then on top of that, I was in charge of the community enhancement unit, in charge of the accident investigation team. I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anything out, but so once I retired from there, I ended up working in Park Hampstead for a year, and then applied here and got hired, and the school resource officer job opened up here, and took that one. I've been here for this will be my 4th school year.
So why did you choose to become a police officer?
I just always was interested in it. I thought it would be a good career. I thought it was something that my father traveled a lot when we were growing up, and I said I didn't want to travel. I liked traveling, but I didn't want to be on the road for work. So I thought it would be a good profession, and I had football coaches that were police officers and always admired them, and just kind of went that route. Going into the military was a good thing for me because I realized that I did enjoy it.
What do you think it takes to be a police officer?
The number one thing I think it takes is integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. You always have to realize, and of course in this day and age, everybody's looking. But it's just one thing that I've always told people, because if you sacrifice your integrity, then you've given up your ability to function properly as a police officer. Mm-hmm. You're entrusted with upholding rules, standards, and laws, and if they say if you're a police officer and you do something wrong and you get in trouble, it's not just a normal person getting in trouble, it's headline news, it's, and you're expected not to do those things, but it does happen.
Have there been bad and good times?
Oh yes, of course. It's always a job of ups and downs. You never know what you're going to deal with on the day that you're there. You can be completely bored for your entire shift, or you can be completely all out, running around and going to different calls and showing up on a call that you thought was going to be a nothing call, and they'd say you find a body there. I mean, it can run the gamut of as simple as a parking complaint where you don't ticket or anything like that, to you're walking into a crime scene.
And what's one thing that you would give or advice for future officers?
I would, for future officers, like I said, one of the things I always did as a supervisor, I would sit down and explain to people that when you take this job, it's our career. It's not just a job, it is a profession. You are going to be trained, you're going to continue to be trained the entire life. There's jobs that you get paid more money with completely less training, and this job is constantly changing the laws, the rules, whether it's ruling comes down on a constitutional law that the rights, one word in the rights form needs to be changed, or something to this. There's always something changing, always something new. So expect change. You have to be flexible, not only in learning the job and doing the job and coming up to a resolution, because you're dealing with people. The other thing that I think I've always told people and learned it the hard way is be nice. You don't come across and be a jerk to people. People make mistakes, and even if somebody is kind of a problem person you've dealt with numerous times, there's no reason to be mean to that person, because the job is not personal. Even if the person tries to make it personal with you, you can't let that happen. It's being nice and being, some of the biggest problem people that I've arrested will come back and say, hey, you're really nice, I appreciated that. Plus it keeps the person from making more of a problem when you're arresting them, you know. You don't barge in, you're under arrest, and yell at somebody. Hey, I'm sorry, come on, we gotta go. You're under arrest. I have no choice. And they usually understand it. You know.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all
Cool.
the questions I got.
Simple enough.
As you can see, Mr. Bacasio had a long, successful career in law enforcement. He was in different places. He got to experience different types of things and his different tasks that he had as a law enforcement officer. Now, policing takes a mental toll on one's soul, and majority people in the services have a high mental level of stress, and it's because every single day they don't know if somebody's going to die right in front of them or if they're going to save a life. And so as a police officer, from what I found, they've all said, be ready for anything, because anything can happen. You know, Murphy's Law, anything that can happen will happen. And you will see things that you don't want to see. Now, how does one get into law enforcement? Now, that's a whole thing. First off, you have to be 21. There is one state, I don't remember the state. You have to be 21, and that's because of the firearms licensing, because in every single state you have to be 21 in order to carry a firearm. There is one state that does allow police officers, or a good chunk of the law enforcement agencies allow at the age of 18. But usually you have to go through training. Most agencies require you have to go through some type of police training, and you'll have to go through the academy, and you have to pass it. Some agencies will send you to the academy. Some agencies require that you already have the training, and some agencies actually might require you to have a 2-year degree in sorry, I forgot the name of the degree. You have to have at least a 2-year degree in criminal justice. Some of them do require that, some don't, you know, depending on where you're going. If you're going to a big place that, you know, has a lot of officers influxing through, and, you know, it's a lot more bigger of a competition, you might want to, you know, have those things to look bigger. You know, you can go about different paths in law enforcement. You can go and as a regular town officer, you can go in through state, and then you can go in federally. Now, with each of those, you get different security levels. Obviously, being in a federal level, you'll have, you know, good high security clearance to do certain things and not do certain things, depending on your security level clearance, you know, but it doesn't make you above the law. As a police officer, you must abide by the law of your states and towns, and you must follow chains of commands and do all sorts of complicated things that we can go into depth, and we can be talking through hours about this. There's a reason why there's an academy. There are other trainings. You don't have to just do the academy. You know, you can become a certified EMT, which will help you become an officer in any town. You can, you know, you can do fire classes if you want, depending if you want to become a fire police or a fire police detective. That you would have to require learning fire science, which is a whole other thing. You can do Police 1, which is like SWAT tactics, you know, become certified in SWAT. Now, getting into the ranking system, for each town, it's different because there's police departments and then there's sheriff's offices. And for each department, it's different. In some police departments, you'll have the commissioner as the highest command, or it's just the chief of police that's the highest command. In a sheriff's office, same thing that works. It's either commissioner or the sheriff is in charge. But life in each of those ranks it's a little bit differently. You know, once, you know, you are on the force for a while, you know, you've seen some things, you know a little knowledge, and you work your way through the ranks. As a corporal and a sergeant, you know, things are not as high as demand, but you're in charge of people. You have to train those people, and you have to, you know, their lives are entrusted on what you do, and the people of the town or state are entrusted in your decisions on enforcing the law. Getting up a higher in the brass, lieutenants and corporals, captains are kind of like the pencil pushers. You'll see lieutenants out in patrols. Usually they're the last on patrol. They're usually in charge of a certain area, and a certain amount of officers, and they're the highest of supervisors. Rarely you'll ever see a captain out in patrol, and like I said, it depends on the department and how they run things. So you could see a captain on patrol. And the captain is above all. Usually there's like one or two of these guys in their precincts. They're in charge of certain divisions and certain like areas. So say one captain, he'll be in charge of the whole entire traffic division, you know, which is, you know, your standard patrol officer, while there might be a captain of like special enforcements like detectives, SWAT, forensics, and all that. After that, sometimes you'll get a commander, which is in charge of the captains, and then assistant chief, and then chief, or assistant sheriff and sheriff. For people that are in the youth and want to seek a career in law enforcement, I suggest checking with your local law enforcement agency. Sometimes they'll have junior programs or explorer programs allowing you to train with the officers in your area and see what it's like to be a first responder. Now, there's different policies on how these things and certain things you can't do. Each one is different, so I'd check with your local law enforcement. Now, you'll face up many challenges. You'll face challenges enforcing the law. You'll see challenges in dealing with people, and you'll see challenges of yourself and the people who you love, and a lot of challenges and policies. Things change from time to time, and so you might have to look at things a different way, and more of a community outreach and helping the public understand the life of a police officer, and earn their respect, and not always being grungy and mean. And in law enforcement, the at-home life, it's very hard because you're always out in patrol, you're always out doing something, or some big call might come in, and you're not saying you're not home all the time, but you're absent for a good chunk there. And for different families it's different. Living in a life like this, you're more prone to be, or anyone in the service, it's I forget the exact percentage, but it's up there in the between the 80s and 90s percentage of high divorce rates. Being in the service, you're more likely to get divorced than anyone else in any type of career. And you might miss a lot of things with your children. You might miss the chance of raising a family. It's up to you whether if you want to live in that type of career. Now, when it comes to law enforcement, we could be talking hours, and I don't want to do that because it's going to be a super long video and take forever to edit. And I'm just mostly explaining what I learned in my research and for a school project. And this is what I want to do. I want to protect and save the people of my country and communities. And I'll do anything it takes to save a life. So that's the end of the video. I'd like to thank my school resource officer, Mr. Picasso, for letting me do an interview on him. And I'd like to thank all the men and women out in the service that are out till midnight as we sleep peacefully in our beds. And God bless America.